Hello and welcome to Sacred Psychology, the podcast for misfits and mystics. Here, neuroscience and spirituality go hand in hand. Join me, Tamara Powell, on a no-holds-barred adventure outside the box, because that's where all the truly great shit happens anyway. Welcome back to Sacred Psychology. I'm your host, Tamara Powell. So, y'all have heard of feng shui, right? How about the KonMari method? Anyone else besides me tried rolling their socks like sushi rolls and making sure each room you frequent feels super juicy and comfy? Oh, please tell me yes, because my guest today takes this to a whole new level. She is so badass, y'all. Michael Spencer is the founder of Let's Purify, an online business dedicated to the purification and upliftment of all aspects of the individual and collective home energy of our living spaces, personal energy fields, and our planet. Michael has honed a process called Home Energy Purification to assist soulful people in releasing attachments to accumulated belongings and experiencing greater freedom in all areas of life. With training as a counselor, Reiki practitioner, and modern-day priestess, Michael brings a wide variety of expertise and a whole lot of heart to her services. She is such a soul sister, y'all. I cannot wait for you to hear more about her process and why she believes, and I wholeheartedly agree, that it is incredibly important to take a look at the world around you. You know what they say, the external world reflects the internal world. So we might have a little bit of work to do. Without further ado, please help me welcome the one, the only, the ever incomparable Michael Spencer. Hey, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
I am super excited about this topic that you and I are diving into.
Thank you. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So
yeah,
I could go all day.
I love it. For our listeners don't know, but I've been stalking your podcast already and just got even more excited about this idea of really purifying the spaces around us and keeping everything, nice and clean on not only on a physical level, right, but an energetic level. And we have so much in common. I can't wait to dive into all of it.
Awesome.
So for those who aren't familiar with you yet, tell us a little bit about how you got here.
Well, it's been an interesting journey for sure. My very first career was in auditing and accounting, and that was not fulfilling for me. I mean, it worked financially and I was good at it. And so I had what I would kind of call like a quarter life crisis. So in my mid to late 20s, I decided that I wanted to go back to school to get my master's in counseling. And so I did that. And that was much more fulfilling, much more along the lines of what I wanted to do. And so I became a licensed professional counselor. I started a private practice, and I was in private practice for 3 years. And at some time last year, I started having this inkling that I didn't want to be in the field anymore. I didn't want to be licensed due to some of the restrictions of only being able to practice in one state unless you get licensed, of course, in multiple states.
Preach.
Yeah, so much about, and even this idea of a licensing board. And a lot of this was born out of my spiritual walk, my journey in evolving consciousness, and just really getting more clear that I am my own authority. I am, a free, sovereign being. And so I really love living my life that way.
Yes. And I have found that for counselors who are willing to start thinking that way, the work just changes with clients. And we're seeing so many have that existential crisis that you went through and eventually led you to give up your license for those very same reasons. It just feels very confining at times. We're not talking about practicing unethically, but about, being able to meet clients where they're at, both geographically and that mind, body, spirit awareness that, everyone's call for evidence-based practice, it becomes very political, and limiting.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I was starting to offer Reiki to clients, and which was needed and helpful. And I know there are lots of licensed clinicians out there who are able to balance the spiritual and energy offerings with their clinical practice. And I tried, and I thought I should be able to, and I just couldn't. It for whatever reason, in my makeup, it just wasn't there. It was the right thing for me to let the license go. And it's felt so good and so freeing. And then, so I would say this was probably about 2.5 years ago, maybe even a little more than that. I started my own process of going through all of the objects in my home. It started in one closet that I had been carrying certain things around from move to move, closet to closet. And I just had this epiphany that, if I don't finally go through this box of photos, I'm going to die someday, and they're just going to be here, and somebody else is going to have to deal with them. It's like super morbid. And at the same time, it was this wake-up call that I think a lot of people have, particularly as they get older. I've talked with a lot of empty nesters who are saying, I don't want my children to have to go through my stuff.
I was fascinated to hear about some European countries like Sweden, where that's like a legit honor system for them. That is a code that they start by the time they're in their 60s and 70s. They're expected to be living with a very healthy, almost like Eastern focused death mentality. And they are purging their houses and they're downsizing whatever apartment space they're in even.
It's so fascinating.
Right? And it's like here in the Western culture, it's always more. And we are seeing a big shift back towards minimalism, but you're bringing even more awareness to it, that it's not even just about the number, it's about the why do you have this?
Exactly. And it's because I say, home energy purification is not minimalism unless that you want it to be.
Yes.
If that's the path that you're on and that calls to your soul, then let me support you in that. And I would never encourage someone to take that route unless it felt really in alignment for them. And of course, as counselors, that's what we do anyway, is support people in what fits for them, not some one size fits all process.
So walk me back to those first days, Michael, where you're starting to develop your own system. Was that on purpose, or was it just something that Spirit was like calling you out into as you were going through those photos and you're like, you know what? Maybe this is a thing.
Yeah, it was definitely very much Spirit led. And I remember starting to call it home energy purification, just saying like, talking with friends and talking with my husband. I'm like, I'm in this home energy purification process. And it was the most liberating experience of my life because I got through the photos, which was so challenging. And I remember there was a photo of my grandparents that it was not the exact photo that hung above our mantle in the home where I was growing up. And it was, a copy of that.
Right.
And I remember looking at that photo and going, I feel so depressed when I look at this. It was black and white, and they didn't look happy. They were sitting far apart from each other. It just didn't bring up, if we think about the tidying up movement, it certainly didn't bring up
joy
for me.
I'm so glad you brought up KonMari, because I was going to go there. I'm like, so are you just kindred sisters to this Japanese firecracker?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I've not read her book because I've been so kind of like in my own development with this that I wanted to be sure that I'm staying true to what I'm receiving from Spirit and from my own guidance.
I love that.
And I actually got it out of the library and I didn't read it. And I know a number of people have said, well, here's the basic premise. And so I certainly
get it.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful, like that facet of how we relate to our objects is amazing. And so with this photograph, I was not feeling the joy. And I was feeling guilt and obligation because who lets go of a picture of their grandparents that hung in their childhood home? Shouldn't you like that?
Oh, you are speaking to my soul.
Oh.
Yes.
And it was just this, I got very, very clear that this is my life.
Mm-hmm.
This is the energy of my home.
Mm-hmm.
This is my energy field, and anything that is in my space, whether it's this photo that's been in a box for the past 20 years or, the blankets on my bed, it's all vibrating in my energy field. And so,
yes. Oh, I love that you brought up the vibration of the thing. Like if all matter is energy, and I think certain objects do kind of it's hard to talk about with non-metaphysical terms, but it's
right.
infused with this emotionality of whatever was attached to it, whether it was trauma or happy circumstances. And then we're carrying it and we're storing it.
Yes.
I love that you're giving us, permission to start rethinking that in our own way.
Yeah. Rethinking it, refeeling it, shaking it up. And so I let that picture go. And now I had an easy place for it to go because I asked my sister if she wanted it. And so she wanted to receive that. That was great. And if she hadn't, then, which there are other things that I didn't, family heirlooms that I didn't offer in that direction because it didn't feel right, because I also really believe in feeling into those objects. Mm-hmm. I have some furniture that my dad made, and there was a particular chair, and he was a fine furniture maker, very talented. And this chair just felt so heavy. Mm-hmm. And I was feeling into it, and it was like immediately like offer that to my brother. And I did. And immediately he was like, yes, I want that.
Nice.
Okay, let me bring that to you right away.
So slide rabbit trail, if you were humor me then. This just takes me. So I identify as an omnist now, having lived across the globe as an army brat and after high school by myself and spent a lot of time in Asia. So Reiki was a perfect accompaniment for me. Right. But I did grow up in a very conservative evangelical Christian household. Now I remember, and I know a lot of people of different faiths believe something similar, that there can be this very inherent negativity, or even because of rituals, or like I was mentioning before, trauma attached to certain items. Do you think that some of the heaviness that more intuitive people might pick up on is something that can be stored in an object?
I think two things. Personally, my own experience, absolutely. For me, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And in my work with people, I think it's so important to feel into where they are and what their beliefs are, what resonates with them.
Yes.
Because if that doesn't fit, then there's no real reason to go down that road. Let's find a different way to work with whatever that attachment is.
Yeah, something that I found as a hobby that I love to do is go walking through antique malls, not because I'm an antique collector. In fact, I'm becoming more and more minimalist by the day. But I love feeling the energy of things as I'm walking by it. Certain booths, I'm like, oh, you could just tell that a happy soul had this little thing and it brought them joy, And other booths, you just go, man, this one just feels sad and dark or whatever. And you could tell the people around me are like, what in the hell is she talking about? They just see the chair in front of them, Anyway, I just love that I think there's people listening right now that are feeling very validated, Michael, that they're like, man, I knew it. I knew there was a reason I didn't like that photo or somebody's face.
And I think that's the thing and so I changed my business name because I wanted to continue on there for a while. Like, okay, I'm not a counselor anymore, and I'm still going to use this counseling practice name and offer a couple of different things, including Home Energy Purification. And even the name of that old practice wasn't fitting anymore. The logo wasn't fitting anymore.
Wow.
And there was an energetic resonance. So this new name, Let's Purify, with an exclamation point, is like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's bring some excitement and some joy, because what happens is I'm inviting people to go into those heavy places, to go into the attic where the stuff from their first marriage that they just never dealt with. I'm asking them, inviting people to say, hey, what would happen if you go into your basement and go into those childhood boxes where there's going to be certainly some treasures and some amazing stuff, and there might be some stuff that makes you cringe or makes you want to throw up.
Yeah.
And it's all there. And the more that we are purifying that which we say yes to having in our homes, because whether we're doing it consciously or not, if it's sitting in our basement, attic, bookshelf, closet, we're still saying yes to it.
Hot damn. I felt that one. Whether it's in your basement or elsewhere, you are still saying yes to it. And how fascinating, right? The subject to go down a slight other rabbit trail. Loving you for this. The concept of, hoarding at one end of the spectrum, but even just storing, perhaps like for me, I'm a huge Enneagram nut. And so I'm big on this. We've got these authentic things that we bring into this incarnation, preferences, tendencies, et cetera, ways that we have of looking at the world. And then we've got all this other bullshit operant conditioning. And for me, a lot of that bullshit operant conditioning was the quote unquote good girl, the people pleaser in me, right? One that wants to get along with things. And so I'm always torn, could also be my Gemini-ness, between wanting to keep things clutter free. But then also I'm like, oh, sappy sentimental. I know I didn't even like that boy that I dated at 13, but he gave me this card. I don't know. I'm ready to release that. It took me many years, and listening to your podcast, I was like, this chick gets it. Yes, the confliction there. And so on that rabbit trail, I guess what I want to hear from you is, what do you think leads us human beings, bring me your counselor hat and your spiritual side, to want to hoard or even collect the shit?
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with our shadows. Those things that are hard to address, that are scary to face, and we all have it, and it's absolutely reflected in all of the stuff that's stuck in the attics, basements, garages, sheds, storage places.
Ooh,
I think that's
moment for me. Yeah.
Nice.
Keep going.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, do tell.
I think that's a big part of it. And I think, as we evolve on the spiritual path, and you're speaking a little bit to it with I want to hold on and I want to let go, that it's natural in the denser aspects of ourselves, right? We're human, and we're this really, really, really dense energy in our physical bodies, and we need a home. We need shelter, and we need certain things to live these lives that we created. I need my laptop to be able to connect with you for this podcast. I need my car to be able to drive places. And so I think sometimes those needs get out of proportion, or maybe we're attaching unconsciously to things that we think that we need or that we want. And have we really gotten clear? Is it the operant conditioning that we're just saying, well, this is what society says I need. I got to go get the new iPhone. And, the incredible family history rules, that are handed down about holding on to things. I mean, there are people,
ding, ding,
who have grown up with Depression era parents and grandparents. And so that's, so many rules about what it's even safe to let go of.
Right.
And so this is really about opening up consciousness around these decisions so that people can get clear. Why am I holding on to that? What is that? And so it's never about how much can I let go of, unless you want it to be, because that's really fun and exciting. You could go through an entire box and say, all of this stuff still remains. It is right for me to hold on to it. Beautiful.
Right.
And you've shaken it up. You've taken everything out of that box. And I guarantee you it's not going back in the same way because it can't.
Good point. I love the inquiry process. To me, that's the most powerful of being able to go what stays and what doesn't. Because even bringing it back around to spirituality, I found that when I go through some of these things, right, the associations with memories and stuff come back with them. And it's just another opportunity for me to go, you know what? Parts of this is still sacred to me. Mm-hmm. I do enjoy this aspect, but I'm going to give myself permission to release the rest of this.
Yes.
Which is wonderful.
And that's the beautiful thing, because it's not all or nothing. And some of us, myself included, have had experiences with all or nothing thinking. And this is such a beautiful opportunity to go, you know what? I want to save 2 sets of this china, and I want to get rid of the other 10 pieces.
Yeah.
The other 10 settings. Like, you can do that.
Yeah, I have a colleague, beautiful chiropractic neurologist. I'm sure she's going to hear this episode. What up, girl? When she was helping her children, she adopted children, sibling group, and one of them I know struggles to let go of his belongings. Mm-hmm. So she has a tendency to hoard, and she came up with this brilliant idea to take photos of these treasured objects and then put them in an album and donate the actual item or give them. So then he still has, right, the lovely attachment, can go back and look at the memories, but no longer taking up space. And I've had other clients who may have perhaps, they lost a pet or another person that was really important to them. And so they just couldn't part with these items that, were attached to this person's memory. And so perhaps they made like a shadow box and cut a little piece of the doggy bed and put it in there, and a picture of the doggy and put it in there. And same thing, was able to hold on to the joy, but transform it. And I loved on your first episode, you talked about the wedding dress. Oh, I did the same thing. But you brought me to tears again. Thank you for that. Can you tell our listeners about your process with the wedding dress?
Sure. Yeah. So I got married 4 years ago. And when I went through my home energy purification process, whatever that was, 2.5 years ago or so. So I had the wedding dress stored in my closet for a year or 2, and it just always sat there. And it was one of those things, I had a belief that, that's what you do. You take the wedding dress off and then you store it. Now, I didn't do what most people do. Like, if you're going to save your wedding dress, like, have it cleaned. Oh. It was just, I put it in there thinking I would deal with it someday, I guess.
And you did, ironically.
Exactly. And so my wedding was outdoors, so it had some grass stains on the bottom, and it ended up with a giant red wine stain on the front. And I just remember, as I was going through my closet in my own process, thinking, what am I doing? Why am I holding on to this? What is this for me? Because I knew it's not like I felt like, oh, it's going to be bad luck if I, get rid of my wedding dress. I just knew I didn't want it anymore. And it was it's an important piece to me. I wore it on a really important day, and at the same time it was useless. I'm never going to wear it again, and it's stained. So it's not like I could donate it to somebody else who could wear it. And so I started looking around on the internet. What do you do? And this is something really beautiful that came out of my own process, is like, oh my God, Google it. You want to get rid of something, but you don't want to put it in the landfill? Google that shit. Because there's so many creative things to do. And when I found some links to people seamstresses who use wedding dresses to turn them into gowns for infants and children who have died prematurely, I was just moved and was like, well, that's exactly what I want to have happen, because this is one of the principles and essences of this work is we're circulating.
Yes.
So rather than this object sitting in my closet because I don't know what else to do with it and I feel kind of obligated, like I should keep it because that's what we do, to be able to go, wow, this object can leave my closet, thank goodness, because I'm tired of it being in there, and go to this seamstress who can create it into something else and then pass it along to grieving parents so that their child has a beautiful gown to be honored and buried in. Are you kidding me? Like, it was so...
Doesn't get more beautiful than that.
Right. Like, just so beautiful and heartfelt and tender. And now that's what's happening with that dress.
Yes. Oh, I just love it. I did the same thing with mine.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And that really is, that's the juice. You know, here's something that feels stuck and kind of weighed down and heavy. And in a, click of a mouse button, I can contact somebody, get an address, package it up, send it away. Boom.
Love it.
Yeah.
So after you went through your home and first of all, what was your husband's reaction while you're clearing out your space?
Well, I started with things that were exclusively mine to make decisions on. And as I was doing that, he was very supportive in listening to my stories and being present to process a little with me if I was like, I just don't know what to do with this. So he was I just had like my own rabbit hole about the intuitive process that developed. So yeah, I'll just share about that. So what happened initially, I was getting really overwhelmed with the volume of things to make decisions about. And then like, how do I make this decision? Like, there's so many different ways. And I really started allowing it to be more intuitive to where I could just go, and I can do it to this day, just walking into a room and I might notice a book on a shelf that's like, that it's time for that to go. And I might have a mental question about that. And often it's that first intuitive nudge that's right for me.
Yep. First answer, best answer.
Yeah. And so that made the whole process a lot easier, and that's part of what I teach people in their own process, is how to tune in and listen and how to be still long enough to not just slam the closet door closed again and run away. So as I was doing my own process, my husband was really supportive. And eventually I got to a point where I wanted to go through some of the objects that were shared and, things in the kitchen and books on the shelf that belonged to both of us. And by the time I got to that point, he was familiar enough with what I was doing. And there was so much stuff building up in the living room that I was preparing to offer to people and give away. And so he's a pretty flexible, laid back person. So he didn't mind our living room looking like a yard sale for a couple months because it was a long process. So we went through things together and both took a really respectful approach. And there were certain things that there were one or two objects that he wanted to hold on to that I was like, oh, I'm kind of done with that. And when I was able to really be with his reasoning and why that was important, it was an immediate softening. I'm like, oh, well, of course, that makes sense. Yeah, we can hold on to that and vice versa. So and we have pretty good communication and openness in our relationship. So he was great. And then what's interesting is a few months ago, there's a closet in our home that had a lot of his stuff in it from a previous move that just got stored in this closet. And he came to me and said, I need to do that closet now.
Wow.
Very spontaneously. And I, asked him, what can I help you with? And, there were a couple of things that he wanted to share with me, his own treasures that he found in these boxes and things that he wanted to share, like, wow, I got rid of that. I recycled that. And just being present for his celebrations, his process. Like, wow, that was really hard to go through that.
Sounds like a bonding experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a cool thing. I'm just picturing people, let's have a date night by decluttering, you know, things I don't think most couples would think of, but I'm over here kind of swooning going, oh, that's a lovely process to collaborate on. Go team.
Yeah. So then and I think it was important, you know, in our home, you know, we don't pressure each other. And so for him to come to it in his own time when like, this is my jam, I want everyone to purify right now. And of course, you know, I'm not going to push that on people. I just get so excited and passionate about it. So it was really neat to see him come to it in his own timing and that I could just be a presence. And I love that idea for when people are on the same page, like absolutely do it together and learn about what is it about. I don't know. So I just look around at things sometimes. Like, what is it about that filing cabinet? Like, I think it's an ugly, clunky thing. Like, oh, and to you, it represents productivity and organization. Okay.
It's kind of cool because I'm, you know, all about the whole mind, body, spirit connection. It allows us another way, whether it's our partner or our child, or for you hearing your clients tell you about their stories. It's another way for us to learn and to see beneath just the outside that we get so used to, the 3D. Like, let's talk 5D and above.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. And I think it's a neat process with clients because it's how do I want to say this? You know, with my counseling background, you know, I used to meet with people in a 3D space, an office space, and so they would come in to the space and we would meet and we would talk and there would be experiences. And with this, it's like it's an added dimension that I get to see more of people, even though I'm not in their homes because I do all of my work online.
Right.
Or by phone. So people are always sending me pictures of, like, I'm getting rid of this pile of stuff. Like, I'm donating all of these books, or like, here's this pile of stuff that came out of my basement. And to see that, and it's people oftentimes showing their literal shadows.
Ooh.
And then I'm invited into that. You know, I had a client say, you know, oh, can I show you? We're on a video call and she's like, I want to show you my closet. Can I do that? I'm like, yes, please show me what we're talking about. And so I get to be in the space without physically being in the space. And I get to see more of a client, and then knowing that everything that they're showing me is a reflection of some inner aspect. It's like, wow, people are trusting me with such intimate details.
Yeah, that really almost chokes me up as I'm just picturing my clients and, you know, all of the emotional baggage, and now imagining what the physical baggage is that's attached to it behind it, you know?
Yeah.
That I'm sure is around. And so I can easily picture like eating disorder paraphernalia and hoarding and compulsive eating and, you know, traumatized objects. Yeah. Wow.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just wanted to hear more about your purification process, but now I want to know whatever you were going to say.
Well, I was going to say, I teach people how to use ceremony and ritual to help release the old energy patterns. And, you know, I think that can be, so rather than this, and I think it's interesting, I don't use the word purge to describe the work of sorting through and clarifying and purifying, simply because, and I know a lot of people use that word, and so it's okay. Sometimes folks that I'm working with will use that, and I'm not here to say, like, you shouldn't use that word. For me, when I think about the literal physical body purging, you know, I think about...
It's never fun.
Right, it's not fun, it's terrible. For me, there's no way to discern, do the nutrients stay and some yucky stuff comes up. It all comes up.
Yes.
And so when we think about purging the stuff from our homes, I get, you know, the picture of somebody coming through with a garbage bag and just going, well, you haven't cleaned up, it's all going. And
my childhood.
Right. And that's, that can be really
Ouch.
traumatizing.
Yeah.
And certainly,
I felt that one.
yeah. And parents can certainly get to a breaking point. And,
Right.
that happens. And so I like for this work to be an alternative to that. And it's so about clarifying a gentle or fierce purification, a releasing of what's no longer serving. And to know what's no longer serving, we have to get clear about that. And so it's never about, like, for me in my work with people, this represented trauma, so get rid of it. And even if a client wants to do that, like, that's great. And maybe that's the exact right thing that needs to be done. And that's not going to be right for every person. There are folks who may need to do a ritual or to have a ceremony or, perhaps an item that represents trauma, just because I'm on that mindset. Maybe it needs to come out from, if a person is holding on to it and it's hidden away in a closet at the very back because they don't want to think about it and they feel shameful about it, maybe it's bringing it out to the front of the closet so that they see it when they open the door, and they're beginning to transform what that object means to them and what the experience means to them and how they're identifying themselves. Like, so these objects that can represent pain or bad memories, we get to bring a different energetic to that through consciousness and through being witnessed. So it gets to be, and the thing may ultimately end up in the trash.
Yeah. Who knows?
Let's see, like, what's the process on the way there? Because that's the process of transformation that a person's experiencing. And it's just amazing.
Hell yes. I'm thinking I'm all about ritual. And I'm often will create them with my clients. And I'm thinking about one in particular who had one of those really old mini cassette tapes, would do like voice recordings on, but that we can't even play anymore. But because this one had been attached to a rapist when she was a teenager, it was just a voicemail, but she couldn't get herself to get rid of it, right? Because what if she ever needed it again? And I remember her the day that she told me, I think I'm ready to like melt it down and add some crystals to it and turn it into something before I get rid of it. Like, she just had to put it through a transmutation process before she was ready to dispose of it. And just really, to me, brings home exactly what you're talking about, because to me, the process of going through something, even if we are going to eventually get rid of it, is just as important as the actual final decision.
Right.
I love that your process brings that to the forefront.
Yeah.
So give me some other highlights about Michael's process as opposed to perhaps just the KonMari method.
I think it's the KonMari method of, and again, I'm not well versed in that, and from my understanding, it's really feeling into it, and does it bring joy? Does it spark joy? And I know that was in my awareness as I was in my own process, and there were lots of things that it's like, okay, well, this screwdriver, does it bring me joy necessarily, or my toolbox? Like, not really. And I'm glad that I can fix stuff.
Sure.
And so for me, there needed to be a broader set of questions, which I actually have on my website, which is it's 15 guiding questions to boost clarity during a decluttering process. So I'd be happy to make that available for your listeners. And so it felt like that question wasn't quite broad enough. And I wanted, in my own process, I needed more breadth and depth than that. And, it's about asking the questions. And it's also, when I work with clients, the process itself can be very overwhelming. Like and I don't know how much she taps into preparation for the process. I like to work with people who are doing a full home process, or they want to do their attic, like a big process. I also work with people just around single objects, because we've talked about, those objects can represent so much and be really rich. So if somebody's getting ready to do their attic, being prepared with those types of clarifying questions is super helpful. It's also helpful to go, wow, there's a huge amount of stuff here. How am I going to do this? Am I going to do it box by box? And okay, every time I empty out a box, I'm going to make sure all that stuff gets distributed where it needs to go. Or am I going to do a lot more at one time? So perhaps the guest bedroom or the living room or another space turns into the sorting area. And then we've got practical and logistical concerns. Is it too dusty up there to be in there for a period of time? Is it hot? Is it just, I can't do that in the summertime? So there's lots of those practical and logistical things that I like to help people be prepared for, so that way, because we already know it's challenging enough to keep the lid off the box and to stay present. Present. And I work with people teaching meditation and mindfulness to be able to stay.
Yeah, you're not going to get that with the KonMari method. Although my sock drawer did look like cute little sushi rolls for a hot minute. Stay that way though.
And the KonMari method, like everything else, has its place in the universe.
Absolutely. Still a fan, but I love this added dimension that you're bringing to it, the mindfulness and the psychology and just the depth work. You definitely have a sacred soul purpose, and I see you living it so beautifully.
Yeah.
Thank you for being you and showing up as you.
Absolutely. And it has, I will acknowledge that for myself, that it's taken a lot of courage. I mean, letting go of my license. I knew over a year ago I wanted to do home energy purification full time. I didn't even fully know what that meant. It was that that's what I want to do. And it took quite a while to let go of my license.
Did you get any backlash, girl?
Not so much. My husband a year ago, when I first brought up letting go of my license, was definitely not comfortable with it at first. And he was absolutely reflecting my own insecurity about it.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
I was thinking more colleagues, though, that were like, you're doing what?
No, I think by the time I talked to colleagues, Allison Per Year, are you familiar with her with Abundance
Practice Building?
Yeah. I spoke with her, and I spoke within that group, and I received support. And
Fantastic.
I didn't know that other people were doing this, that this was sort of starting to be a little bit of a trend. So once I started connecting with others, and not extensively, just I think knowing that they were out there.
Yeah.
I was like,
they're outside the box.
Yes. And once I allowed myself to trust it and to know my truth and to speak it, then my husband was still not 100% comfortable, because he associated that with the ability to bring in an income.
Security.
Totally get that. I totally get it. And when I was more secure about my decision, he didn't have anything to rail against, because I wasn't in that vibration of it's okay to be doubtful about this, because I knew what I needed to do. And I know it's the truth of my soul. And when I'm clear about that, it's easier to move forward. It's not easy every single day and every single moment. And that general forward movement is easier.
Tell me, what's the driving force behind this for you? Like, what makes this so sacred, this process of why do we need it so badly? I feel it, and I'm sure everyone listening has, but can you help me put words to it? Like, why should people, if they're not completely sold yet, think about going through their house and purifying?
Liberation and freedom. And so often we associate that with someone else having power or control over us, and that's not truthful. And this, there are so many ways to experience greater freedom and liberation in our lives. We can do that through counseling. We can do that through ecstatic dance. We can, so home energy purification isn't the only way. And to me, it is an absolutely vital process for people to explore, because it means freeing ourselves from our own shadows. It means evolving our consciousness. It means getting clear and truthful about what we want to have in our lives. And so we may discover in going through our clothes closet, I don't want to wear these clothes to work anymore. I don't want to go to this job anymore, which can bring up some oh shit moments, to be sure.
Sure.
So, and you know,
the authenticity behind it. Like, I worked with so many women that I'm like, are you even wearing that outfit because you like it or because you just got used to it and that's what other people around you seem to be wearing, you know? Like those light bulb moments and you just see a little glimmer of their authenticity come through. Yeah. How cool to take a relook at your closet, girlfriends.
Right. And I think too, it's kind of turning this whole process of decluttering or shedding old baggage on its head and going, it can be fun. It's a treasure hunt. It's an adventure. You're not going to be the same at the end because you can't be. It's transformation. It's transmutation. Mm-hmm. And it's bringing the sacred to something that, like, what can be more mundane than cleaning out your attic?
I'm ready to break out my pom-poms, which are around here somewhere from high school. I will be holding on to those puppies. Those ones still bring me joy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. These things that maybe the pom-poms are tucked away somewhere. Do they want to be, stuck in a jar on a desk so that when you're in a podcast, you can grab them out and shake them? Or you're at home if you have kids, you're cheering your kids on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wherever, if that's not a type 7 on the Enneagram, the enthusiast, I don't know what is. That is part of my sole purpose, to be a cheerleader for everyone else on the planet. Yes.
I feel that about you. I'm grateful.
Good. I'm so grateful for you. And I am so excited about this podcast that you have launched. Tell the listeners about this Home Energy Purification Stories.
Thank you. And as everything, I feel like in the past year, as I've been shifting and changing professionally, I have shifted and changed up the podcast very, very recently. So I'm going to be relaunching it under the name the Let's Purify podcast.
Nice.
And what I think that will do is allow it to be a broader umbrella for the conversation. And so it will include home energy purification stories, my own and others. And I think just open up that door to be able to communicate about, shadow work and trauma and objects and, all sorts of really rich topics, spirituality and, decluttering our hearts as well as our closets and what that means for people. So, and I think home energy purification stories was a beautiful starting point. And the title's kind of long as I learn more about podcasting.
Touché. Yeah, I could see that.
The Let's Purify podcast, I think, is easier to remember and will hopefully take on a longer, more vibrant life as I move forward.
Amen. I am so excited. I will be binge listening as they come out. So,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. This has been such a pleasure.
Yes, likewise, Tamara. I'm just thrilled, as you can tell from my enthusiasm and passion, just talking about it. I love this work. It's just so, and I think that for me, there's the reason that I want everyone to do this and why I feel like it's so important. And obviously I want people to do it when it's their time to do it. And for me, I love it. I just had lunch with a friend the other day and she's like, Michael, I know that this is your work and I don't want to, in any way like take advantage of that, but I want to talk with you about this home energy purification thing. I'm like on the edge of my seat, literally. Like, tell me, share with me.
I've been waiting for a moment like this.
Yes. So it's just so, and that's how I can really tell it is this soul calling. I get so lit up. I love it.
Yeah. And I've always been the type that I'm the one that is excited to dive through an attic, but I love that your process, just listening to you describe it, really, I could tell makes people who may have been afraid or may even have anxious tendencies and hoarding tendencies that go, but I want to do it. I want to experience that liberation and that radical autonomy, as I like to say, the authenticity that comes with coming home to your own sanctuary.
Yeah.
Like, hot damn, we all need our own sacred space.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And that, that is the space of the heart in each person. And then, of course, that's reflected in our home spaces. And so, yes.
Yeah.
Let's purify.
Let's purify. So where can people come find you if they want to book a session, hang out with you more?
Absolutely. So the website is letspurify.energy. So it is a unique ending as opposed to a .com. It's just letspurify.energy. And the podcast, I will get that to you so you can put it in the show notes. I'm not sure what the new link is going to be.
Okay.
So once we have that all taken care of, I will get that over to you. And my email is michael@letspurify.energy. So super simple.
I'll have that in there too. Well, I cannot wait. Please come back on sometime and let's do this again.
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Sacred Psychology Podcast. I pray you found some inspiration and empowerment to go out and make this life the most fulfilling possible. You can follow Sacred Psychology on Facebook and YouTube. If you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Tag us on social media and let us know what you think as well. Please note that the information provided is not meant to convey professional, psychological, or medical advice. If you could use such services, I highly recommend seeking them out from someone you trust. To get in touch with me personally or to see how we might work together, please check out ariatherapy.com or talesfromatrapezoid.com. Until next time, everyone.